Howdy, folks. Happy Thursday. We have some things to discuss. There's a lot of sort of chatter and rumor about Matt Dumba that's popped up in the last couple hours. He is a healthy scratch tonight for Minnesota. So, of course, everybody is gleaning information from that, thinking that there's a trade, and there might be, knowing Bill Guerin. But we'll start with the pre-show. Go ahead, Russ.
Well, the only thing I could say about that is Guerin was on Sirius yesterday and basically said they were going to ride out the season with Dumba. So I don't think it's that.
Right.
That's all. I mean, he just basically said that.
Well, that might be the case, but we'll talk about it in a minute. But
yeah. So let's talk about the Montreal Expos. So there's talk now, again, you get it every decade about the Expos coming back to Major League Baseball. And actually, when I first started, was when I was reporting that the Expos would move to Washington. And I remember I was on CBC 2 or 3 or 4 times in a 2-year span talking about that. To the point where actually somebody in the Nationals invited me to go to opening day in the suite, and it never came through on it, by the way. But that's okay. In this situation, though, I don't think it's going to happen for a couple of reasons. They needed to get a downtown stadium, and they never did. No. That was the biggest obstacle in my eyes. The Big O is not an MLB stadium. It's just not. Could you play there a year? Sure. But you have to have something else in place, which they don't. The tax situation is still a problem. And I don't think baseball is as popular there now as it was. And here's the thing. They were not getting good attendance. I'm not holding against them now because I'm sure the population's grown and everything else. Mm-hmm. But I just don't feel like when you're in that town that baseball is still going to be all that well appreciated. And, I don't think the fans are going to show up.
We were there during the summer and, for the draft and for the couple establishments that we went into that were their TVs on, there was not baseball on. The only one that was that last night when it was all the writers, and I think somebody had asked that it was Yankees, Red Sox, and somebody had asked to have that game put on there. So, but it was not on. So it's like, I mean, that's sort of coincidental evidence, but I do think that, I don't know if there's enough, pressure there to get a stadium. But plus, we know that there are markets in the U.S. that are dying and that are begging for, like Charlotte and Nashville and a few other places.
Hey, listen, I mean, I loved the Expos. I went there, to see one game at the Big O. When I was a kid, I was watching them playing from Jarry Park first on television. I'm a big Rusty Staub guy. He played for both. Steve Rogers was a hell of a, I get it. I could talk all about their history, but I just don't think I just don't think it's there. I think it's a bygone era.
I mean, I was into their history because, Ellis Valentine and Raines and Dawson, Steve Rogers, as you said, and, Gary Carter before he got traded to the Mets. I mean, that was, that 94 year where they had that fantastic.
I wrote about it in my book, Strike Three, and I interviewed a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, the series that didn't happen, Yankees versus Expos, would have been fantastic. I was just touch on this because I don't know how people, watch particular, especially now in the post-pandemic Netflix age where you have all these series. I mean, you've got every minor character in the Star Wars chain getting their own series and things of that nature. And I had somebody recommend to me the series on Hulu called Only Murders in the Building, which is Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez. So I said, I'll give it a shot. I'm always looking for something to watch. And it wasn't bad. It wasn't fantastic, but it was humorous and whatever. But it's 2 seasons of 10 episodes. I watched
5 of each or 10 of each?
Oh, 10 of each. So 20 episodes, two seasons, 10 episodes each. I watched the 2 seasons in 4.5 hours because I essentially fast forwarded through the credits, fast forward through the scenes where they're walking around Central Park or whatever. I got the general gist of it. I didn't get everything, but I got enough of it. It was good, but it's like it wasn't something like, oh my God, I need to watch every detail of every episode. And so like I wonder how many like I did, and I took more time with this, but the Jack Ryan series on, I think it's
I watch it. It's good.
yeah, it's really good. And their season was, I think, 8 episodes, and that took maybe most of a day, like the time I had. So I got more out of that, and I think you have to for those series. But for something that's sort of like humorous and happy, and you're just trying to find out who the murderer is at the end of the year, I like skipped 2 or 3 full episodes and knew where I was. Like I could pick up on it. So it was good. And I'd watch like season 3 that's coming up, but
I'm not through it yet. I'm about 2 episodes.
I won't be a spoiler. I'm just saying it was good, and I liked certain things about it. I mean, the dynamic between the 3 is really
Krasinski's good at it. It's a good part for him.
Well, that's the Jack Ryan is fantastic.
Oh yeah. What are you on now? I'm sorry.
No, The Only Murders in the Building.
Oh, the other back. You went back to the Steve Martin. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that was good, and I like I said, I like the dynamic. I like the humor, but after a while, it sort of gets, it's like, okay, I can fast forward through this.
Right.
But I just wonder how many people are like that in terms of they skim. It's like skimming through a novel.
I don't skim it either. I stay with it or I don't. There are some series, like I'll get like 6 minutes into it, 10 minutes into it. Sometimes I give them 2 episodes, and if they don't grab me, it's over. And it's just over forever.
This is coming from somebody who last summer or the summer before watched or listened to all 20 seasons of NCIS.
Yeah, that's just maniacal.
But it was in the back. It was either I was watching it or I was listening to it in the background.
Right. Background, I get it while we're writing. Like I write the same way, so I'm always looking for something on in the background too.
Yeah, and I'm doing that. I'm doing that now with another series that
just like murders on in the background. I get it.
Well, no, I'm doing that this time around with another series that people probably, it's in the background everywhere, which is Blue Bloods, which is because I like, I'm a Tom Selleck fan. So I never got around to watch.
That's my mother's favorite series. She's 87 years old.
Well, okay.
Between that and The Equalizer, you have the taste of an 87-year-old.
Last thing, and this is funny here. Jeez, I like that. That's a good one. But no, what is it about people in their 80s and 90s that and my mother is like this? She has Law and Order SVU on the marathon that's like on USA Network. It's on from like if she's not watching Price is Right or Let's Make a Deal. Or
mine doesn't watch any of those.
Yeah, my mom watches in the morning Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal. At night watches Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy.
Yeah, see, mine doesn't do that. Mine is on a strict diet of Lifetime and Antenna TV for the old TV series. Many of them, like the Westerns and the Waltons and Blue Bloods.
I mean, I actually like it. The funny thing is, it's like, gee, how many Tom Brady connections can you have here? You have Donnie Wahlberg, who's the part of the Wahlberg family who are best buddy. You have Bridget Monahan, who used to be not married, but as a baby is Tom Brady's the baby daddy, and it's based in New York, but these are all Boston people. So it's or I don't know about Bridget Monahan, but she's by extraction, she's Boston. Anyway, so let's get started with the show. Eklund will be joining us any moment. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Thursday, January 19th, 2023.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Lagello, and this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. And Gary in the chat says he's friends with one of the cast members of Blue Bloods. So there you go. I particularly would like to be a friend of the rather attractive female who is the secretary for Tom Selleck. She is a stunning blonde lady. I can't remember her name, but if she's single, I'm up for it.
Like you would never survive in Los Angeles. You gotta in LA.
Blue Bloods is based in New York.
But yeah, even or New York. I mean, both.
I would survive in New York. I've survived in Toronto. I can survive anywhere.
I remember when the Rangers and Kings were playing each other in the Cup final, right? And we were joking around about had to be the best looking women's Cup final of all time, for both cities. The only thing that probably could top it would be I would say LA, Montreal could top it because Montreal is just crazy.
You know what? Mike would lose it on the subway. He would not be a good subway rider.
Funky, yeah. Who is an Oilers fan? Are you talking about Mariska Hargitay, or are you talking about the girl from Blue Bloods? I must know. Just tell me in the chat. But let's talk hockey.
Let's talk hockey. Oh man, I'm sorry. I was talking to my wife. She's still got 105 fever. It's just crazy.
Oh, gosh.
I know. So I'm my son now doesn't have it, but he's got a sore throat. We're we're all isolated in the house. I'm the only one that goes between the two zones. You're
isolated by your pinball machines and video games.
Yeah. So I've got the N95 mask. The really good one. So she's she's starting to finally feel a little bit better. She hadn't been able to eat anything for 3 days. I go to the market real quick. I get her a couple things. She's like, "Can you get me a nice smelling candle? I just need something to smell better in this." I'm like, "Yeah, definitely, 100%." So I get her a nice smelling candle. I come back. It's one of those 3-wick candles,
Yeah.
I light it with the match, and it took me a while to light the first wick, and I'm like, I can do it. The kind of thing you have on your finger. It's getting small, but I can do the second one. I can do the third one.
He accidentally bought a trick candle that doesn't light.
No, I get all 3 lit. I go to blow it out. I'm like, it's not blowing out. Realizing I've got my mask on.
Oh, no.
I can't blow out the candle with my mask on. What a moment that was. I'm like, I throw it into the sink.
Hold on, though. You don't have a torch lighter? Everybody has one of those.
I do, but I was just racing. And I'm like, what the hell? Oh, my God. It was the weirdest feeling in the world. Why can't I blow out this candle?
Right. I can picture that for what it's worth.
Oh my God!
Esmer said that for Christmas, this is what we should get Russ: a pumpkin spice candle.
Oh no, pumpkin spice!
It will end up in the trash.
Yes.
So
anyway, so let's.
All right.
Let's start with
wearing my Milan Lucic shirt today.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah, that's who that is. All right, here we go. Ready?
Bigfoot.
Yeah, no, it's Milan Lucic.
Oh, okay.
Hello, Hockey World.
No. We already did the intro. We already did the intro.
No, anything.
I was going to say let's start with Steven Stamkos.
All right, let's start with Steven Stamkos. The guy's got a couple goals.
500.
500, and he does it in glorious fashion with a hat trick. That's kind of the way to do it. I thought that was something. Yeah, he's been such an interesting It's he's like a cat. How many lives does Steven Stamkos have? Really didn't feel like he's been dead twice in this league.
Yeah.
There, when he came back for that in the even before
when he came back in the cup for 10 minutes, it didn't.
Right. That was the bubble year, right?
Yeah.
But even before the bubble, there was a point at which it looked like he had lost it. His back was so bad he missed an entire season.
There was a certain fan base that called him dead when he refused to sign with them, but that it goes without saying. But no, I mean, the 1 year he had played only 17 games. I think that was the year with the broken leg.
Right.
He missed half a season. Half a season was the year that at the Olympics in Sochi.
Was he concussion, right? Didn't he have concussions?
He had blood clot problems.
Right, a serious issue. The people he should probably never play again. He comes back and plays, and then after we see that 10 minutes, where he scores the goal in the bubble, everyone's like, "Well, that's it, definitely, that's done." Because that he really he gets hurt. I'm still convinced to this day that he got hurt because his teammates jumped on him after the goal, and he was so happy about the whole thing.
I'm not sure, but I can say this about him. As a junior player, he was really close to being as good as Crosby.
Yeah.
He was a contemporary of him in just about every way. He's had an amazing career. I think he's, it's interesting because he has Messier qualities as far as for leadership.
Yeah.
He's one of the best leaders out there. He's got the goal scoring ability. I don't think he will ever get his full credit in this era because of these injuries.
Yeah.
But I think he's probably a top 25 player all time.
I mean, he's definitely a Hall of Famer, right?
No, there's no, and
No
especially
doubt about that. I mean, he had his controversial moment where he almost went back to Toronto. Like that was really close, really close, apparently.
in retrospect, they were talking about that today on Toronto radio, and essentially, like, he did his due diligence and he talked to teams, but in the end, it was not really serious. I mean, I know that the
Tire was serious.
Yeah, see, I
know that that's a talking point for Russ. It's like, okay.
Tell me another time in hockey history that a team is trying to sign a player and they have a corporate entity there with them
and have like $100 million on the table, and it's not really serious.
You could give me a compliment.
It's not really serious.
What?
What do you mean it's not really serious? Canadian Tire would have signed him.
No, I think did you say? I thought you just said that they were saying that it was not really serious.
No. I'm saying Stamkos considering going to Toronto was not really serious.
Oh no, it was serious.
I think it was serious. I do.
But of course, this is but that's the kind of thing that a player can never say, because Tampa paid him a lot of money. He's a Tampa Bay Lightning player. Like, he can't sit back and say, "Oh, I was really," no one's ever going to say that. Like, I like this summer when was it Burke? And Burke was talking about some player in Calgary who was close to leaving, but they signed. Who was that? They signed. How am I thinking?
Not sure. Maybe Hanifin?
No, it was one of their big. I don't know.
Maybe Monahan?
Oh no, it wasn't Burke. I'm sorry, it was Malkin. It was Malkin. Yeah, Burke and Malkin, not Calgary. Burke and Malkin.
Oh, okay.
And they asked Burke this summer, like, how close did it get? And usually teams are never going to tell you that. And he's like, it got really close. Burke just came right out and said that. It was really close. Like, we made our best offer and we couldn't move from it. And they said that's not good enough. And that's where we were. And it wasn't just like talking points. We were both at a non-starter spot. So yeah, the player will never say
that has happened with a lot of great players in a lot of sports in history.
Well, here's the thing with Stamkos. I mean, and here's how injury has derailed him, but you have to give him credit for perseverance of fighting through that and being at 502 goals now. After the disastrous first season with Barry Melrose and Tocchet,
right?
Tocchet was good for him, but Melrose wasn't. He scored 51, 45, and 60 goals. 60 goals being his career high. Right. Since then, due to injury or whatever, the most goals he scored is 45.
Yeah.
Now, had he not been injured, I heard somebody on the radio today saying, "Well, he could have challenged Ovechkin."
We'll never know.
We'll never know. You really can't say that. But you have to say that he has fought through a variety of injuries. He's 32 years old now. He's got over 500 goals in less than 1,000 games. He's got 2 Stanley Cups. He's an absolute, no doubt Hall of Famer in my mind. So yeah.
No, he's class.
The leadership is what gets me, because I remember interviewing him right after they made it. They beat the Rangers. They made it to the conference finals for the first time. And that was like, not only was it the most important thing in the world to him, but you could tell that was like one of the things that he had to do. And I give the guy a lot of credit. He's got the will of steel. He really does.
I will always have my first memory of him, which was, he was just into Tampa camp. I was friends with some people in Tampa, and they said, you got to come over and talk to him. I went and talked to him before he was big and famous, because my family vacations near Tampa. We were down there, and just like the humility and just the basic, just a normal guy aspect of him was really glaring. Like, he's just absolutely, he's, like you say, he's a tough leader, but he's also just like a sweet guy. He doesn't really have any.
He has no ego.
He was super funny. Like, he was just funny to talk to. He wasn't, he wasn't like trying to big time you at all or anything like that. He just had a good sense of humor. At that point, Mike Smith, the goalie, was also on Tampa, and the two of them were hilarious together. They're both really funny.
Yeah, Mike Smith can be,
So they were both really funny guys. So that was really something to see. So yeah, it was really a great memory for sure. And I'm really happy for him.
So last night, couple games that are, well, actually, let's talk about this because we mentioned it in the pre-show, and maybe you have something on this. All of a sudden, the last, I'd say 2 to 3 hours, starting with a report from Mike Russo of The Athletic that Matt Dumba is a healthy scratch tonight for the Minnesota Wild, and that's all of a sudden sparked a bunch of potential trade room. Now, Russ said that he heard Guerin on satellite radio say that he's going to ride it out with Dumba,
Yes.
but I question that. I'm not saying he's lying. I'm saying, but we know that, and as you've mentioned many a time, a general manager says something that is true in one moment, and 5 minutes later, the circumstances may change.
Yeah, but in this case, you got to look at the narrative of that team and where they are at. Like they have not. I mean, they were the best teams in the league last year. And they lost in the first round of the playoffs. They're a really good team this year. They feel like they've got two good goalies right now, which they do. Both of them are playing extremely well. And they got Fleury, who's like a playoff, guy. That should be good, hopefully, And Guerin is all about winning. I mean, the cap gets harder for them each year, so it gets more difficult to do things. So right now, I think that they're going to, from the people I've talked to there, they seem as a self rental, type thing. And they're gonna go for it. Yeah, this is a team. I mean, you can get something for him for sure. He's a valuable player, but you can't get something for him that'll counter what he could potentially give you in a playoff run. So it's like the reality is.
He said he was going to let it roll in the interview.
Yeah, and I totally 100% believe him. I think the only thing that would change. Yeah, the only thing that would change that is if Minnesota just went terribly cold and fell out. But sure. I don't think that's going to happen.
Well, so. I know that Guerin said before what he said to on satellite radio. He said that to trade Dumba, he would have to get something that would help him, equally as Dumba would if he kept him. Now, somebody in the chat, and this makes a lot of sense because of, I think, Minnesota needs to score more, and this guy being a Minnesota area native, Dumba for Brock Besser. Now the whole thing there is Minnesota or Vancouver in that potential deal would want to get Dumba signed. Otherwise, why would you? Unless they are happy with clearing 2 years at $6.6 million on Besser's contract and are willing to take Dumba and either flip him at the deadline or try to re-sign him, but not having.
I don't think Minnesota could afford the loss on defense. Is one. Here, I wanted to show you this. This is Stamkos the day before the draft, like when we interview prospects. That's what he looks.
Crazy young he looks, man. It's
crazy young. The other thing is that what Guerin said is they knew they needed to sign Boldy, which makes sense. I mean, Matt Boldy's a terrific player, and whatever happens after that happens. So he knows there's going to be changes, and he wasn't going to walk down that road yet on radio, but there's going to be changes.
Well, and it's going to be Dumba,
Dumba aside, there's going to be other changes.
There's going to be more than that. Yeah, there's going to be more than that too. Yeah, for sure. But he's going to be gone. But I'm talking to my buddy Dan, who covers the team out there for us. He watches them all the time, and he's really he says that Dumba gets kind of a raw deal in town. He thinks he says he really is a top 4 defenseman. He really is. He is 100% there, and the fans. For sometimes his fans aren't really super nice to him. He says, in general, the fans are really rough on him when he, doesn't make as many mistakes as some of the other defensemen make that don't get ridden as hard, he thinks.
Well, you know what it is? I think with him, he is a little bit of a gambler, but he also has this physical nature that a lot of top 4 guys don't have that can actually score too. So that makes him valuable. But yeah, he does make mistakes. He's not like rock solid defense.
For sure.
But he's decent.
Yeah, and he's not, and he brings a lot of energy. He's a good guy in the locker room. He's not, there's a lot of things about him. I mean, they've got a lot of good locker. I mean, Guerin's built a strong culture there for sure. Spurgeon is about as good as you can get in a locker room. They've got some really good people there.
But next year's a challenge with all the dead cap money.
Yeah, next year's a challenge for them for sure.
$14 million in dead cap space. Russ, what did you think of the Boldy contract?
Sorry.
I thought it made sense because was it 7 years, $7 million?
Yeah, no, I mean,
I think it makes sense because if you look at it, he's definitely a second liner. So if you look at what a second line winger gets who could score, what did he end up with? 20 goals last year?
Last year in 47 games, he had 15 goals. So you average that out, that's about 25.
And what is he on pace for this year?
And right now he's got 12 goals in 43 games, so he's on pace for 20 to 25.
Right. So you get a guy who's scoring
He's a 60-point winger. He's big.
Yeah.
He's tough.
Yeah, big, tough, 60-point winger. I'll tell you, he's a great teammate in the sense that you don't have to worry about this guy. He makes very few mistakes. He can actually drive play at times. He will make these tremendous passes to set up scoring chances. He's really smart. When he came up through the program, he was one of the smarter guys. He was good in college. It's a no-brainer.
Well, I mean, I think the thing here that's the most important for the Wild is cost certainty. I mean, maybe you're thinking, okay, we're paying him a little much right now based on what he's producing, but 3-4 years down the line, that contract could be an absolute bargain because he could be a 30 to 35 goal scorer, a power forward, and you've got him at $7 million. And believe me, there's a lot of crap out there in this league that's being paid $7 million. So to have an effective big forward, that's a bargain.
Now here's something where the chat room is like, well, if he's getting 7 by 7, Raymond will get 8 by 8. Raymond's having an off
player.
He is, but he's also having an off year. Raymond is not having a great year.
Yeah.
Now Yzerman would be smart, and we know Yzerman is smart, that tries to get Raymond signed this year coming off. Now I'm just looking to see if he's.
But I don't think he'll give him 8.
No. See, this is the thing. I mean, Yzerman is like Lamoriello in one respect. He never signs these guys a year out. Raymond has got a year left on his ELC. He won't sign him this summer.
Yeah.
He'll sign him next summer after his ELC.
So you want to get, like Lou always says, if I have another year to look, I'm gonna see what happens. It's like
no, that's true.
You go either way. Now that sometimes that can work
you
against
could
you
lose
too.
a player over that, but
how much did Colorado benefit from signing McKinnon after a bad year?
Oh, I know.
And they got him for $6 million or 6 point something million.
Yeah.
And I mean that was a big benefit for them. So
Gary's saying, Pasternak might get 8 by 11. Maybe he will. I think he'll get between 10 and 11.
Who's this? Pasternak? Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If Boston gets him for less than 10 million, then they've got compromising photos of him. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'm joking about that, but what I'm saying, I mean, this is the top 2 or 3 right wingers in this game.
Yeah.
He's got to make more than Mitch Marner is making 11. He's got to be making more than that.
Right.
Well, he might just make 11. He might say 11's fine.
Yeah, but that's the days of the Boston Bruins getting their hometown discounts died with Charlie McAvoy's contract. It's not happening anymore.
Well, it is actually. It is this year.
What?
And, no, I mean,
look, 1 year. I mean, you're talking about Krejci
and Bergeron, and Patrice Bergeron's cheaper than he should be too.
Is he? I mean, how much?
Yeah.
What's his salary?
2.5, I think.
Yeah.
2.5, way cheaper than he should be.
It is.
Yeah, but
if he was a free agent, what could he get? Like if he wanted to go out there, he gets kind of 3-year, $21 million deal.
He can get 7.
But Eck, that deal and the Krejci deal were let's get the gang back together for one more kick at the can.
Right. That's the only reason he did it.
That is the plan. But if they go 60-8 or whatever they're doing now, I mean, I don't think
they're going to all come back. It's true.
I think a second year is probable. That they'll get another year of those guys at that rate.
Right, but they've made their money.
Bergeron, that's what I'm saying. So they made that they're still getting home down. They're getting home down discounts because they guys did make their money.
The Leafs are going to beat them in the playoffs, and all of this is going to go awry.
Yeah. Okay.
Nobody believed that. That's unbelievable.
I am not.
They have to get by Tampa to play Boston, Russ.
Yeah.
It's weird how Toronto and Tampa already know they're playing each other.
They're locked. It's
crazy like right now. And that will, I think you'll see this trade deadline affected by it. Like, I think that Toronto has to go out there looking to beat Tampa at the deadline.
Well, Russ and I were talking about this morning. And it's like, okay, if you're put yourself in the position of Julien Brisebois on the Tampa side and Kyle Dubas on the Toronto side. Brisebois is operating from a position of strength. He's won 2 Stanley Cups. He was in the Cup final last year. He's got all of his players locked up on long-term deals. He's got the only player of any value who is a UFA at the end of this year is Alex Killorn.
Right.
And I would, Nemestikov was a late ad. Perry was a rent, not a rental, but a depth guy. Belmar the same. Ian Cole the same. So all the key guys are locked up long-term.
Yeah.
Okay. So he doesn't have much cap space, but we know how general managers can manipulate things. They'll probably have about about $2 million under the cap. They're going to go out. They're going to trade draft picks. They're going to trade a prospect or two. They're going to get another third line guy to add to that group of Nick Paul and Hagel and whoever. They'll probably go out and get Luke Shen or somebody like that to add to the depth on their defense. And they'll say, Toronto, come on. That's what they'll say. And they've beaten them once before, so they have the confidence that they can beat them again. And they have the best.
Here's an interesting thing for you, Mike. Remember I was saying they should get somebody, the Leafs, who scores a lot against Tampa? Well, the number one guy is Ovechkin. The number two is Eric Stahl, who's washed.
Yeah.
But number 8 on the list who is available is JVR.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I don't rule out JVR as somebody, but JVR is not the type of player that, he's a good player and he's still effective. And I think with certain situations out there that if a team that needs a top 9 guy, a guy who can play on the power play, he's a really good fit. The problem is in Toronto, he's not going to play the power play. Not at all. He'll play the second power play, but not the first power
He'll
play.
play second power play, but again, what if he is a true lightning killer? Like you need someone.
And tell me, is he good enough defensively to play on a second line? I don't think so.
He's not as bad defensively as
this year. He's gotten better.
Yeah, I think he's playing within himself a little bit more now. And
I just think you have to have somebody that has a history of scoring against Tampa.
I think that's helpful, but if you're Dubas, you're looking at somebody who is a proven playoff performer and somebody who provides the aspect that's been missing from this team. They tried it with Nick Foligno. He was a sort of heart and soul sandpaper guy. He got hurt after 3 games. The guy, obviously, who's the poster child for what they need is Ryan O'Reilly. Now, we don't know if O'Reilly is going to be available, and if he is available,
we don't know if Toronto's on the list.
Yeah, right. And we don't know whether Toronto is willing to pay the price to get him.
Well, they should be if he is on the list.
Should be. But if they're not, then they're going to be looking for second or third options, and a guy like JVR might be a second or third option.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine that Ryan O'Reilly wouldn't have Toronto on his list.
Well, we don't know. I mean, look, sometimes guys just don't want to play in certain places.
Yeah, but that they do if the team is winning. Like Toronto's a great place if you're winning. I mean,
true, and they update the list every year. So,
right, and I do think this with O'Reilly. Everybody's saying this has been a bad year for him, and he's a better player than the year that he's having. He was leading the league, I think, in minus for plus minus, and he was having an off offensive year, and he's 32 or 33 years old.
Yeah, he's like 32, I think.
It would do he'll still get a lot of interest in the summer, but if he goes someplace like Toronto where he gets a lot of attention and all of a sudden turns it on and he's fantastic, that really drums up interest for him.
He could set his own price then again.
Right now, Tony Soprano, okay, there are certain players that I think are fits for what Toronto's looking. I don't think Bo Horvat is that, and I don't think the price that they would have to pay for Bo Horvat.
The price is not. They won't go there because they would be too detrimental to where they're at right now.
Right, exactly.
They're not
going
to talk about Horvat because I did a lot of. I do have some rumors about him today. So yeah, I wrote that an E4 trade rumor today, which means how E4 works is it's 2 people connected somehow to either the player or the teams involved. So it's when 2 people are saying the same kinds of things. I mean, they're not saying exactly the same thing, but they're both saying that the Islanders are heavy on Horvat and that the Islanders are the most likely place he's going to go. Now I know Freeman's come out and said, I think Boston, right? That he said Boston because he could sign long term in Boston even. It's possible. You got Carolina out there, of course. Detroit is definitely, Colorado. We talked about he's a perfect fit for Colorado, who is actively seeking a second line center. That's what they are doing.
Yeah.
So, but this, when you look at the Islanders scoring situation, and where they're at right now, and how Lou is kind of going all in and he's not going to be accepting of like them not making the playoffs. So he's going to go for it. This is like when he went and got Plekanec, into Toronto. This is that we're going to see something. He's going to go out and make moves to try to get them over into the playoffs.
But that was a fourth line move, and this is
no right. But I think that they need more. The Islanders need more than that. So,
well, okay,
that would be a good fit for the Islands.
Let's do the anatomy of a trade here. I'm Lou Lamoriello, and Russ, you're Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvey.
Okay, good.
Okay, so Horvat's on the table. And if I'm Lou, first of all, I'm offering them somebody to clear the space that I have right now. Horvat's making $5.5 million.
Hold on. The first thing I would say is, Lou, how's it going? By the way, Providence looks great this year. Like I gotta butter them up a little bit.
I like the small talk beginning of this situation. Yep, continue.
And my response is, I'm not interested in this crap. Let's talk trade.
Okay.
So he's all business. So
you don't know the stress I'm under here, Mr. Lamoriello.
So the first thing I'm saying is, as part of this deal, I have to include somebody that will clear some cap space so I can fit Horvat, because right now the Islanders, according to Cap Friendly, have $3.4 million in cap space. That's not enough to fit. That's not enough to add Horvat to the group that they have right now without subtracting somebody. Now, okay, Russ, do you want Casey Cizikas, who's got 4 years left?
No, we have no interest in him.
Do you want Cal Clutterbuck or Matt Martin?
I've already got guys like that. No.
Okay, so what you want is youngsters. What you want is, and if being realistic here,
you're being Lou, Mike. Just be Lou.
Yeah, you're telling him what he wants.
Right.
Well, okay, you tell
I'm going to tell him that he wants the best.
That's what I want.
You tell me what. Yeah, you want Oliver Wahlstrom. Okay.
I want Wahlstrom. I want a first round pick or an equivalent, or at least a conditional first.
Right.
You can top 10 protect it. That's fine. Even though your fan base believes you're going to make the playoffs, I don't think you're going to make it. But no, he wouldn't say that to Lou. I'm just kidding. But no, that's what I want. I want those two things. I need those two things, and then we could talk about the rest for balancing.
Okay, I'm throwing in Richard Panik because that clears $1.3 million.
That's fine. We'll take him.
Okay, so Richard Panik, Oliver Wahlstrom, and a number one.
Never a better player in the NHL's name than Richard.
Richard Panik could watch Ryan Miller's turtle at the border if it's still there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the price you're gonna have to pay. I think that's fair. If it was
a deal for me.
Yeah, I mean, I would do that. But do I think Lou would do that? The real Lou? No.
I do. I do think Wahlstrom. I do.
Okay. Yeah, he doesn't care about Wahlstrom. He doesn't. He's at this point, he's kind of given up on him in his mind usually, because he doesn't give a guy several years to get it together. He thinks, Wallstrom's undoubtedly, he's going to sell Wallstrom as like, this guy's got all kinds of skill, here and ever. He needs a fresh start. He's going to sell him like that. That's what Lou will do. Now, Lou does try to do things good, do what's right for the player too. And he's going to say, this is what's best for Wallstrom. He's got to get out of here.
Now, Wallstrom is on IR right now, so I don't know the extent of the injury, but it doesn't sound like it's something serious or.
And Lou, you also owe me a meal at Dinosaur Burger too.
So you're Rutherford. Are you Rutherford, Mike? Can I be the actual GM of Vancouver in this thing? I'm going to call you up because you're like,
He's so gonna some Swedish meatballs.
If you're Rutherford, Mike, I'm the actual GM of Vancouver. Yes, right. And I'm calling you up and saying, hey, by the way, I'm the GM here. Should I be talking to Lou? And secondly,
Rutherford says, no, shut up.
Secondly, we do need a defenseman really badly. Like that's honestly, I think that's.
Yeah, but this is the problem with this deal. They're not going to trade. Ryan Pulak is 28 and he's signed for I think 7 more years. So they're not going to want to bring in that. They supposedly say that they want players with term. I don't think they can get players with term for Horvat. He's a rental. You can get players with term for Besser. You can get players with term for JT Miller if you decide to trade him. You can get players with term for Quinn Hughes if you decide to trade him, or Demko. You can't get one for a rental. You can get a really high price. And if you want to flip that, like we were talking with Kevin yesterday, if you want to trade for a prospect pick and a player for Horvat and then flip that around and send it someplace else for a player that you can retain, that's realistic. You're not going to – what? Are we going to do Ryan Callahan for Marty St. Louis? Both those players were rentals, weren't they, Russ? Was it a rental for rental?
Callahan, I think, had another year.
1 year. He had 1 year left.
And St. Louis was pretty much they knew he was going to sign.
And they wanted Callahan for leadership. That's what Yzerman wanted him for.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking Carolina and Vancouver, like we were talking about yesterday, and Carolina wants Horvat again, I'm asking if I'm Rutherford, I'm asking for. I mean, you're not going to get Martin Necas, but I'm asking for Necas. I'm asking for their best.
Clearly, he passed on all those guys because we heard from Kevin that the price was too high for Carolina.
I'm asking for Seth Jarvis. Okay, you answer that because
I'll answer this question from Thomas in the chat room. For those of you who are just listening and not watching this, does Gostisbehere make sense for the Islanders? He makes sense for the Islanders. Do I think Lou likes Gostisbehere? No.
Yeah, for Lane Lambert, it may not make sense.
He's seen Gostisbehere a lot. Gostisbehere didn't have great games against the Islanders. That's another thing I would say. Like, for what it's worth, like, I think. Gostisbehere is a good player still, and obviously he's shown great numbers in when he's given responsibility. But
it depends on the severity of Pelech's injury. If it's something that's going to be really long term, then they might be interested in Gostisbehere as a power play quarterback because he's a really good power play quarterback.
Yeah, that's true. But and listen, Gostisbehere, his confidence is high right now, so he can go somewhere and definitely help a team. But the question is, I don't know that that's the kind of player Lou wants to grab. Lou definitely wants to grab offense here, no questions about it.
Yeah, they need offense. I mean,
they have in the last 50 power plays. They're going
to lose Mayfield, but in the end, they could probably plug Aho in there and survive, or Salo and survive. But they need the offense.
The last 50, I think it's 55 power plays. They're a net zero when that they've scored 5 power play goals and given up 5 shorthanded goals. That's a crazy. You can't go anywhere with that.
Now, I heard something interesting about Arizona. Okay, we know they're going to trade Gostisbehere because he's a UFA. We know maybe they trade Nick Ritchie someplace or Bukestad, but that essentially anybody not named. Well, I mean, Chychrun is essentially anybody is up for grabs there in terms of trade. Chychrun, obviously, Clayton Keller, obviously, Lawson Krause. Vamelka. I mean, all the names that are there, not the young guys, not Dylan Gunther, but the players who are under contract that they have a certain price for them, but that they're willing to trade anybody. Now, Russ, I've long said Lawson Krause would be a perfect fit for Toronto.
For a lot of teams, yeah.
For a lot of teams.
Yeah, no, he's definitely one of the guys that people are looking at.
I don't know if they're moving him. That's the funny thing.
They're not, and this is the other thing, Mike. I think you're assuming a couple things on Arizona that we can't necessarily assume. Because I don't think that they're definitely moving Gostisbehere. I think that there is a good chance that they re-sign him. He wants to be there, from what I've heard. And
yeah, but why? Okay, why wouldn't they deal him and then sign him in the offseason? They get
because they don't have the confidence that they could send him somewhere and maybe they're not like the old this is not like Kachuk, like when in the old Arizona. This is like Gostisbehere goes to the Islanders and they win. He's going to love it there. He's he'd rather be but he might. It's hard to tell players. Honestly, people love playing in Arizona. It's a great place to live. I mean, it's a really. I mean, ask.
I'm just saying that knowing that what it's like to play in Arizona. You take a playoff run somewhere, and they have.
Yeah, but if you have a player who wants to be there, Mike, that's worth something right now for them. That's worth something for them because they're not. They know he wants to be there. If he leaves, do they know he's still going to be there? It's like, are you going to let your girlfriend date other people? I don't
think they're going to trade Krause because he's 25.
I think he's in the same boat. I think
he's only a 4.3 cap hit. And he gets, around 20 goals every year. He's got 16 already this year, so he'll get 25.
Leading the team in scoring, but okay.
There's no reason for him to be traded.
No, okay, but all right, let's and somebody in the comments on my blog floated this idea, and I don't think that Toronto would go for it, but it would make sense from an Arizona perspective. Lawson Krause for Matthew Nyes, an Arizona-born prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, now the only thing is that the Leafs would be giving up 3 years at ELC salary of a guy who could be as good as Krause.
Right.
Arizona players, we do nothing but score goals, man. We know that people who were born or live there.
I think that trade is a possibility. I do.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Now the 4 point, you'd probably have to include. There'll probably be other aspects, like Kerfoot going the other way to balance the salary and things like that. And
that as a basis could happen.
Yeah, I mean,
I heard a PRV trade rumor by people putting PRV's name up there. I think.
Well, Tony Soprano wants Puljujarvi going to Dallas for Gurianov because he's just so anxious to trade Gurianov. Why don't you throw Khudobin in there, Tony? I mean, you throw him in every deal.
Yeah, no.
Khudobin actually throwing all the day old bread into this deal. Like
Khudobin is an interesting one because he actually is starting to get some notice because he's playing incredibly well in the AHL, and for what it's worth, he's really he's definitely helped himself. There are people out there. There's somebody that's going to go for him. He's going to end up. He's going to end up being the second or third goaltender on a contending team.
The thing that's killer is his salary. It just kills.
I know, but it gets later in the year. If guys have guys on IR, it gets.
I don't think we're going to see him traded. I don't.
I do.
I hear you, Ak. I mean, he's played 21 games with Texas, and he's got a 2.65 goals against, which is respectable. But Dallas wants to move him so they can get rid of the salary. But they'd have to eat salary, and they don't want to do that.
I mean, I'll trade you. I'll bet you a jug of Take a Boost. He doesn't get traded at the deadline.
Oh man! Wow. All right.
You'll be shaking like this if you drink a jug of that stuff.
I need it right now, man. I was up all night. I could just drink it straight. Take a Boost is sold to you in a concentrate. You're supposed to put 1/10 Take a Boost and then water into a jug.
And you don't even dilute it.
I could just drink it straight right now and still want to fall asleep tomorrow right now.
That's like me pouring the Tang powder into my mouth. Well,
yeah.
PRV
his Tang ice cubes, I'm sure.
There is a team that has interest in PRV, and I believe in that's Florida. Now, the interesting thing is how that would play out. Who knows? We don't know. But the thing about Puljujarvi that people continually say is he hasn't had a good, Finnish influence there in Edmonton to help him through this. And of course, you go there, you have some serious Finnish players, and
Yeah, I mean Barkov and Lundell
Barkov and Lundell, so Barkov, would be the perfect mentor to a guy like that. I could see Puljujarvi going there and being a factor. I could see
the only thing about Puljujarvi, is even though he's 24 now, what is his maturity level? That's always been part of his problem.
I think, the kind of stuff he's gone through in Edmonton does mature a person. This has been the kind of, he hasn't had it easy. He's never had it easy. It's always been hard. So I think that you put him into Florida, totally different environment. The media is not all over him all the time.
You stick him on the third line in Florida and hope for the best. You could.
I mean, Florida does need secondary scoring.
Yeah.
And right now they need a lot of things, but they do need that too. They're missing guys like, Marchment and guys that we need.
Depending on what they ask, I mean, I would trade for him if the price was right.
Yeah. No, I know. I don't know. And I don't know what that price would be. And I don't know how they would do it.
He's all over the place. Again, last year was his best year, 36 points. But a lot of guys, this is the problem with Edmonton. A lot of guys who aren't performing this year were really good last year. Like Yamamoto's on the IR now. I get it. Bouchard was much better last year. Puljujarvi is much better last year. Why?
It's really weird because someone put Duclair for Puljujarvi. That's an interesting one. But I don't think that would happen.
No, I don't think they would do that.
They really like Duclair.
Yeah.
He has been a big, reason that they have struggled.
Yeah.
And he's got talent, definitely. He's a really interesting player. I've been a Duclair fan, you guys know, forever, and I thought he was gonna.
I've always liked him.
Yeah, I thought he was gonna launch into stardom a lot quicker than he did. I mean, he's the kind of guy when you saw some highlight goals early in his career, that guy has serious skill. When he scored goals, they were beautiful goals. But I don't think that they would give up Duclair for PRV. I think it would be a different move.
No, I agree. It would be
They simply don't have the cap space right now. Even with Hornquist on long-term injury, they don't have the cap space. So
Yeah.
I don't know how they pull it off. And
I don't think Puljujarvi in Boston's a good fit. I'll be honest. I think there's too much pressure there for him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Columbus with Line
Florida would be really good for him.
Dallas does make some sense.
Dallas, I could see.
He can't be put into some place where they actually expect him to be a top 6. He's got.
I think you put him in Columbus, he's just going to continue doing what he did in Edmonton, in my opinion.
Yeah, he'll just keep drifting. He'll be drifting,
but you put him in Florida with a bunch of hardworking players and a team that has a really good chemistry, attitude type situation going on, because the Panthers really do have good chemistry. They're not playing well.
They're better lately, right? They're playing better lately.
They're playing better lately, and they are still hanging on to this concept. That they are, like I said yesterday, able to win more kinds of games now, and that they're having some learning pains by that, and early in the year.
I think it's more than learning pains.
I agree, but this is, do you remember, like, there was a year the Penguins were like the best team in the league and came back the next year and were just really like that. They had this kind of season too, but they kept saying the same thing. They're like, yeah, we were the best team in the league in the regular season. We didn't do well enough in the playoffs. I think they lost it. And they came back really off regular season, but they really worked on a bunch of things. Like they really because they were pretty sure they could make the playoffs no matter what. So they did struggle to make the playoffs, but they did make the playoffs. And then eventually they went really far in the playoffs. The big gamble here with Florida is, they do think, when you come off a President's Trophy, you think you can experiment a lot this year and not worry about making the playoffs. That's not the case, because
you can do everything you want with Florida. If you don't improve their blue line, they're not going anywhere. I truly.
That still doesn't mean they can't make the playoffs.
I think they have enough. I think they have enough requisite talent to make the playoffs. Any team that has Matthew Tkachuk and Barkov, and Tkachuk's having a great year, and Barkov is just a great player, I think you can make it. But I
also have 2 goalies, Mike, that can steal games.
Right. And I agree with that. Bobrovsky played fantastic against Toronto on Tuesday. He looked looked like the old Bobrovsky. But go ahead.
He's looked a lot. Bobrovsky's looked like the old Bobrovsky, for all of last year and this year too. Like he is on his game. Like people who sit back and say he's not on his game.
I know he's on his game lately. I don't know if he's been on his game all year.
He wasn't. Lately he has. But
he wasn't winning. But he wasn't. That wasn't his fault necessarily.
No, but again, I look at that at their situation where you're playing Gustav Forsling 21 minutes a night.
Yeah,
and Gustav Forsling would be a great bottom pairing defenseman. He's a number 2 on this team. Brandon Montour, who was a number 4 or 5 in Buffalo, is a number 2 or 3.
Well, here's an example. Tonight, they should win 7-1 against Montreal. If they don't, then I'm not going to believe that.
Yeah,
they're on the right path.
You watched the last couple games. So last night they blow the lead right to Toronto, but the game before that, they looked like against Buffalo. They looked like the old Panthers. That was the first time all season that I've seen them that they were like, okay, they're starting to do all the things that they want to do in this new system, but they can also do what they do. It's the first time they looked like the Panthers from last year. They have to do that again tonight against Montreal. You're absolutely right.
Here you go.
The Montour, I think, is underrated, to be honest. I think
I think he's changed his game. He's always had talent. I think he's different than he was in Buffalo. I think Brandon Montour is good.
Well, okay, he's all right. He's having a pretty decent offensive year, 37 points in 44 games. That's a 70-point defenseman. But he's playing 24 minutes a night. He's -5. Gustav Forsling, 28 points in 46 games. He's playing 24 minutes a night. He's a +11. Ekblad.
That's pretty impressive.
Right, it is. 20 points in 35 games. Ekblad coming off another injury, playing 24 minutes, -14. So, but okay, if Montour was on your second pair, and if Ekblad's a top pairing defenseman, and if Forsling was a 4 or he was a 5, that would be great. But then you're playing Radko Gudas almost 20 minutes a night. It's just they need so badly. They need 1 or 2 defensemen to put to that group, and if they had them, like they miss Sherratt badly. They missed.
Oh no, they really miss Uyghur. I mean, he's like
and Uyghur, yes.
Uyghur is like a potential all-star defenseman, and that trade was giving up a hell of a lot, like because it was and it wasn't really Huberdeau that I mean Huberdeau was obviously a top scoring player, but I was not upset about moving Huberdeau because I thought
they had to.
He kind of is what he is. They hadn't won with him. They had him for a long time. They had he hadn't taken them to the promised land, as one of their star players. But Uyghur, I was upset about because that was like to me that's a guy that I thought. I mean, obviously they felt like they had to make that trade.
Well, they were in the same situation with both Uyghur and Huberdeau. They were not willing to pay what those guys were looking for,
and they knew Uyghur wanted a hell of a lot of money, and Bill Zito made his determination, right? So he determined what he's worth, and that's where a GM gets paid for, right? We'll see in time. Now, I always say this about Zito. One of the GMs I know better than most because I've known him as an agent. His strength is going to be like the Forsling thing is where Zito thrives because his strength has always been. Remember, he was a very successful agent, but he wasn't a power agent like J.P. Barry or these other guys. He made his success by finding the guys that those guys missed and turning them into stars. And he prides himself on seeing people that that other people miss. And I'm thinking that Forsling is one of those guys that he believes in in a big way, and whether or not, that turns into more, and he's a defenseman. So he's a defenseman. So it takes time for him to develop, whether or not he's going to develop right away. But he has done. I mean, there are some players that he has definitely done on that team and signed for good contracts, where he's gotten some good deals for them. The players that have been forgotten about a little bit. So
right. I mean, Forsling is like found money. They got him from Chicago.
Right.
I think they claimed him off of waivers.
Yeah, they did.
So I mean but all I'm saying is with the departures, Sherratt left via free agency to Detroit. They traded Uyghur. They haven't really replaced them, and you can't replace those guys with Josh Mahura. So if at the deadline, if they're in the race, if they're gonna make a trade for somebody, I think it's gonna be a defenseman, and if it's not, then
it'll be a defenseman. I think it'll be a surprising defenseman because that'll be the Zito way. It'll be somebody like you're like, wow, he's like somebody we consider like a 5, 6, 7 that he thinks can definitely be a 4. And he's going to find his guy like that. It's not going to be like a Klingberg or something like that. It's not going to be somebody obvious. It's going to be something, I don't know, like it could be like, like a Travis Sanheim. And I don't know if that's necessarily it, but I think
but that's somebody locked up long term.
He's already locked up long term. Yes, it's going to be somebody that's a pending UFA. Yeah. I mean, Gostisbehere could be Gostisbehere. That's possible. Being that he's on a good contract and being that they tried to get him before because the owner there really wanted to like sell him to the market because he is from there. But Gostisbehere doesn't really help what they need.
No, I mean, they need a defensive defense. Yeah. They need somebody who's a stay-at-home guy.
Like Luke Shen. That's a name. Like there you go. Like you brought up Luke Shen before. Luke Shen, who's like he's the epitome of that right now. Like he's the guy who people get to be their defensive defenseman, who's going to be the 5, 6, 7 guy, right? Like that's Luke Shen. You get him for. I think he's going to find people for cheap that are going to do not what Uyghur did, but 2/3 of what Uyghur did for 1/8 of the money.
Yeah.
So that's how he's going to play it. But will that be enough to win? That's the big question. I mean, if they just squeak into the playoffs, if they play Boston in the first round, they're in trouble. No one wants to do that. So they're going to end up with Carolina or the Rangers, perhaps. They have a shot against both those teams. I would pick both those teams over them right now, but they have a shot. That 8th seed, like against Boston right now, that's a place nobody wants to be. That.
Again, I think the playoff format is effed. I think it's terrible. I think it should be changed to a conference format. Whether they ever do it, I don't know. All I know is, a team, teams like right now would be Rangers, Devils in the Metro.
Yeah.
The Toronto, Tampa, and the Atlantic, and I think that's patently absurd. But anyway.
It is. I mean, but it's kind of thing that could work for you or work against you depending on the situation, right? So it's like right now it's working against them. And all you have to do, like somebody brought this thing to me the other day, like I hear what Mike's saying. I got this text afterwards from somebody. who was a Calgary Flames fan. He's like, yeah, I know exactly what Mike's saying. I mean, remember, I was a Calgary Flames fan when the Oilers we had to play the Oilers every frigging year.
It's ridiculous.
That Calgary team should have won a couple Stanley Cups. They
won
one,
yeah.
But they were good enough to win 2 or 3. But they had to face Edmonton every year. The Flyers have grown pretty far a lot of times, but they've had to play New Jersey and New Jersey was their Achilles heel, right? So that's like the Boston. That's Toronto's Boston is New Jersey. Is Flyers or New Jersey? Like they could be better than New Jersey. Toronto could be better than Boston, but it's always going to be tough. It's one of those things.
Yeah, I'm just to finish off the show here right now in the Eastern Conference. If it was 1-8. And Boston's leading the Atlantic, and Carolina's leading the Metro.
Yeah.
It would be Boston, Pittsburgh.
Yep.
It would be Carolina, Washington.
Yeah.
It would be New Jersey and the Rangers, and it'd be Toronto, Tampa.
Yeah.
But 3 days ago, it was Toronto and I think it was Toronto and Washington. So you could end up with the same matchups, but it's fairer. But anyway. Okay.
Yeah, no, it could be the same matchups. It is more fair. I agree with that. I don't see any reason why they don't do it. The only reason I've been told is a really bad reason. And that is because they want to have the bracket thing set up so they can have that. And that I think is a horrible thing.
Yeah.
Because I just think that makes no sense in hockey. These people aren't playing brackets. This is not, college basketball. So to me, I hate that reason too. I mean, I definitely think, there's a lot of things that are flawed about this, obviously. But there is the problem is the even 1 versus 8 is flawed, so it's like everything is flawed at the end of the day.
It's less flawed than the other one.
It is less flawed, but then we should just have 2 conferences, get rid of the divisions. That's the other thought. At this point where we are, we're practically, you play 2 teams in the other 2 teams in the other division, 3 teams in your division. It's not a lot of times. It's not that big of a difference, To me, why don't we just get rid of the divisions altogether and just have 2 conferences and have 1 through 8 in each conference? That would be great.
Well, that's why they're going to consider moving to an 84 game schedule so you can play 4-3-2.
Yeah, which would be
4 against your own division, 3 against the other division in your conference, and 2 against all the other teams in the opposite conference.
Which they can do if they knock a week off of the ridiculous preseason, right? They'd limit the preseason games to 3 or 4. It should be 3, no more. It should be 1 scrimmage type thing, where that's in your practice facility, 1 game at home and 1 game on the road. To me, that's all you need. And beyond that, maybe you set up a more tournament, like the stuff that happens up in Detroit. Maybe you have more tournaments of rookies, so you get your young players, so you see them more. But you're not going to, but the whole thing that's having to skate so many veterans because you have to justify people paying for the tickets. It's just players getting hurt in the preseason. Preseason hockey is so horrible. The players, I think, would probably be okay with extending the regular season. They hate it too. They hate it as well. It's no one likes it. There's no rhythm to it. All right. Well, that's all the time I have for today. The other rumor I wanted to talk about, I did think there was another one. I had in there as well. I'll get to it. We'll get to it more tomorrow. Some of the Besser stuff out there is really interesting. And the fact that the Flyers are talking to Vancouver. And it's funny because, Russ had brought up that trade, that concept with Besser for Provorov a long time ago, or Besser for Sanheim, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I brought up Provorov for Horvat, before this all happened. I don't think that that's too far off of what could happen. Now, whether or not, just talking to people today, Russ is going to have to get credit for that if that goes down. But there are 2 teams there that are very much eager to make trades. The Flyers are very interested in making a trade. Vancouver is very interested in making a trade. They want defensemen. The Flyers want a forward. And there's 2 defensemen on the Flyers that they're willing to move. There's two forwards on Vancouver. There's definitely a fit there.
Right.
We'll see how that plays out. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. That's all it is. And we will talk to you tomorrow for Friday, the big Friday with Kevin. See you then.